The February version is the February meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. So we start with roll call. Do I need the roll call or do you have it?
Chair McCready?
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker?
Here.
Commissioner Basasha?
Here.
Commissioner Boggs?
Here.
Commissioner Dorner?
Here.
Commissioner Hill? Commissioner Hill's not here. And Museum Representative Brian Akins.
Thank you. With that, we open our public comment period. I don't have any general comments, requests. So we go on to the consent calendar. Sorry, my mic was not on. The meetings from our January 8th retreat, I've gone over them. I don't have any comments or changes or amendments. Does anyone else on the commission have any changes to the meeting minutes for January 18th? Commissioner?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, it just seemed to me under number 3, the goals and future historic sites, that we had some other goals that we had discussed at that meeting that I don't see here, and I'm not sure. Oh, future, you have it under future agenda items, the zoning ordinance amendment. And then there was the certified local government. We thought we might want to.
Right, and the updated goals should have been distributed to you, but if not, I can email a copy to each of you.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorner, do you have any? Oh, you were not at that.
I was not
So
there.
we're
I
not
was
going
sick.
to, we're not,
I
we don't
missed all
have,
the Christmas parties. I missed everything.
we don't have the benefit of your,
Grammatical.
so is there a move to approve the minutes?
I have to abstain.
I so move.
I'll second.
The minutes are approved.
Call for a vote.
Chair McCready?
I approve. Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Walker?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear who made the motion.
I made the motion.
Okay, and who seconded?
Walker.
And Boggs seconded?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Basasha?
That's you.
Yes.
Commissioner Dorner?
And Boggs is yes.
I have to abstain because I wasn't there.
Okay.
Oh, that's correct, yeah.
Item number two is a public hearing item for the Theodore Woolsey House. Heather, I think you have a staff report and a recommendation.
Yes, Chair. This item on the agenda tonight is a proposed second dwelling unit at the Theodore Woolsey House. Staff's recommendation was to continue the item, and actually the city attorney is recommending that we continue the item to a date uncertain. In the agenda, it does say to continue it to March 13th, but we'd like to continue it to a date uncertain.
Thank you, that's fine.
So do we need to move to do so? Should I open up to public comment first prior to that?
If you have any speaker cards, yes.
I do.
Okay.
David Mason?
David Mason. I doubt if I'll be back for the next meeting on it, but I just wanted to say a little something about the Theodore Woolseys. The Woolsey family had been an important part of American history since 1623. Ojai became part of this legacy with the arrival of Professor Woolsey and his family in 1885. Staying at the Oak Glen cottages, Professor Woolsey fell in love with the valley and purchased the 7 acres across the street and helped with the design and building of a charming home for his family. A separate small cottage was built to accommodate a year-round caretaker, as the Woolseys would be spending most of the year at Yale University. In 1892, Mrs. Woolsey died, and the professor and his sons returned to the East. In 1894, when Professor Woolsey decided to sell the property to Mr. C.E. Bigelow, he had the caretaker cottage moved across the street to the Oak Glen cottages for their future use. It had become a tradition for people wanting to stay at the Oak Glen to build their own cottages, which were then rented out during the times when the owners weren't there. Professor Woolsey expected to follow suit. However, the cottage was never used by the professor. By 1903, the glorious and beautiful Foothills Hotel was completed, and Professor Woolsey and his devoted sister Edith Woolsey found the hotel's glamour, antique furnishings, and the fact that they catered exclusively to the fashionable Easterners was to their liking. Rebuilding a separate cottage on the Theodore Woolsey property would certainly fall in the category of bringing back the aspects of days gone by.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I say something about that house? One of the unfortunate things about historic preservation is that things are discovered that we didn't know before. That house was known as the Clark House for years and years and years. And then when Betty McAllister did the research and found out that it was the Theodore Woolsey house, we lost our place in the valley.
Huh.
Another interesting thing about that, my grandfather was sheriff at the time. John Lagomasino was conducting the auction. My grandfather bid $6,000 and he closed the auction immediately. They took care of their own in those days, and sheriffs were not paid very much.
Thank you, Pat. Do we have a motion to continue?
So I'll make a motion to continue the Woolsey House project.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Boggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorner?
Yes.
Yeah, you're voting to continue it.
Oh, yeah.
Chair McCready?
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker?
Yes.
And Commissioner Basasha?
Yes.
Item number 3 is the sign permit for the Skyflower Boutique located in the historic landmark number 5, the Arcade. Heather, is there a staff report?
Yes. Item number 3 is a proposed sign for the Arcade, which is for Skyflower Boutique. There is a sign program on the property, and the applicant is required to meet those design standards and specifications in the sign program. The applicant does meet them. They're proposing a two-sided hanging sign, 15 inches tall and 32 inches wide, with the bottom of the sign being 96 inches from the ground. The material of the sign is consisting of a 2-inch thick sandblasted redwood. The sign shall have one color for the background, dark Tudor brown, and the sign will have raised letters and border with the lettering Skyflower and the logo butterfly painted Whipple blue, and the letters Boutique to be painted antique white. These proposed color illustrations of the sign are attached to the staff report, and it will be attached to the existing chains with new eye hooks anchored to the building. So the proposed sign does meet the sign program and what's required for the site.
Do you have this? Do you have the Skyflower Boutique?
It's item 3.
No, but this is what I wanted to see. I can't find it. I know it's in here.
Okay. That opens our comment period. Or any
Yeah.
other?
Skyflower blue in. our
Boutique.
color palette?
Um,
I mean, this blue color.
should they have come before us, before they hung it?
No, they haven't hung it.
They have hung it.
Oh.
I saw it today. I talked to the owner. I had her in tears. She was very emotional. She, although a local realtor that I know knows history, she didn't know she was in a historical arcade. She didn't know that you had to get permits. She didn't know that you had to come before commissions. She went out to Frontier Paint. They gave her historical paint colors, unless she came to the desk and got the historical paint colors. The sign is hanging there. And The reason she was upset is because she has worked in her getting this together and doing all the work and no days off, and it was also lunchtime, she was hungry. And I felt badly that I upset her, but I tried to explain things, how it worked, and she just didn't seem to know anything. The person that made the sign, she figured knew everything. Who was the sign maker? She didn't know.
Well, I did talk to, you're talking about Star Crabtree. I did speak with her, so she knows that she had to apply for a sign permit, and I informed her that she was going to the Historic Preservation Commission tonight. So she knew about all that. She may have hung the sign thinking that that just meant she was okay to hang it.
I asked her if she was coming to the meeting, and she said no. She didn't even close the shop by 5 o'clock, but I think she's a very confused person, and she is doing this because she's making money to help with the cat farm that's in Miners Oaks. That's her goal. Having said all that, which sounds very negative, I looked at it and I looked at Priscilla's and I thought, oh, well, it's okay. It fits in there. We should pass it.
Okay.
I don't want to make her cry anymore either.
Nor do I.
Yeah, but it is hanging already, and it's okay. It's not a bad sign. It's not too large, and the blue is kind of blue, but Priscilla's got all that purple and lavender right next to it, so.
Well, I was going to say, it looks like it fits in with the same kind of signage that's in there.
Yes, it
and
does,
is appropriate
yeah.
for the.
So I'm
what
willing to
area
make the
is.
motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
You guys are too fast for me.
Sorry.
Commissioner Boggs,
Yes.
Chair McCready,
Oh, here it is. I found
Yes.
it.
Commissioner Basasha,
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Dorner.
The motion is approved and the signage for the boutique is approved. So item number 4, I believe, am I correct? Historic Landmark Mills Agreement, okay. This has come before us before, House B located at 715 El Toro Road. This is a review of the agreement, landmark property agreement for the subject property and a resolution for the Mills Act. With that, we open the public comment period for this. Oh, I'm sorry. With that, we go to Heather's report for staff. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just wanted to begin with an explanation, because I don't know if it was made clear in the staff report that the last HPC meeting, the HPC made a recommendation of denial for their request for the Mills Act. And then it was taken to City Council, and City Council asked that it come back to the HPC. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear that that was the process that it went through and where we are today. So the City Council has asked that the HPC take another look at it, their request for Mills Act, and then, I guess, make a recommendation on this.
One of the things I'm curious about, I don't remember there being anything before us about changing the front door, because we wouldn't have approved that. But does anybody remember that?
Well,
Okay, well, let me give the staff report, and then we can go through any questions that the commission may have.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So this item is the landmark property agreement that's associated with landmark property number 20, which is the George Washington Smith House at 715 El Toro. This project has been before the HPC on several occasions. It first came to the HPC in May of 2012 requesting landmark status and Mills Act. And at that time, the HPC recommended approval of the landmark status, approval of landmark, but held off on recommending approval of the landmark property agreement. So the item went on to City Council and was later approved in August of 2012 as a landmark, and that's when it became landmark number 20. The project, or the request for the landmark property agreement then came back to the Historic Preservation Commission in November, and that item was continued, and then there were several other continuances at HPC in February and in March. And I've gone in, given kind of a chronological history within the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. But I won't go through every step of the way. We'll just go back and answer any questions that the commission has about that. The applicant later came back to the HPC in July of 2013 requesting to modify the landmark to remove the grounds and just landmark the house. And that was approved, recommended for approval, and went on to City Council and was approved by City Council in August of 2013. So now we are hearing about the landmark property agreement, which did come before the HPC in November of last year, 2013. It was recommended for denial, went on to City Council, and that's where we are today. City Council has asked the HPC review this again. So I go in the staff report, I discuss the two issues that seem to have come up during the process of this request, one being the front door and one being the wall that was built in the front yard area. So I wanted to go through in PowerPoint form kind of our process and the purpose for landmarking properties and the purpose for landmark property agreements. Landmark 20, like I said, at 715 El Toro, received landmark status in August of 2012, modified in August of 2013. The purpose of the landmark property agreement is to implement, and this is from the Municipal Code, the Ordinance on Historic Preservation, is to implement provisions of the Mills Act. And this is to enter into contracts with owners of historic landmark properties who will commit to rehabilitating, restoring, preserving, and maintaining their historic landmarked properties. So I guess the question before us, is the property a landmark? And yes, it is. That's the first requirement for this landmark property agreement. Has the property owner committed to rehabilitate, restore, preserve, and maintain the property? I would say yes. I think that in staff's research on the project, I went through the staff reports and the minutes, and it seems like, everyone agreed that he did restore, he did rehabilitate the project, and he's looking to preserve and maintain the property. The owner has proposed a minimum 10-year maintenance schedule, which is presented tonight for your review as part of this request for the landmark property agreement. I think from here we go on to ask, does the city wish to facilitate property tax reductions in return for this property owner's minimum 10-year commitment to preserving and maintaining the property? So that's what I'd like the commission to consider tonight, and consider it based on the facts that we have in front of us in the staff report. If the proposed landmark property agreement does not meet the satisfaction of the HPC, are there any recommendations or modifications to the proposed agreement that's attached to the report? What requests or conditions would need to be incorporated into this landmark property agreement to ensure the property is maintained in a historic manner? If it is so that the HPC decides not to recommend approval of the landmark property agreement, does the HPC wish to pursue removing the landmark status on this property? Typically, landmarking a property and a landmark property agreement go together. If you're landmarking a property, you're saying it's got historic significance, and as a city, we want to protect those landmarks, and we want to make sure that they're preserved and maintained over time.
Excuse me, it says proposed landmark property agreement, and then it says if we decide not to recommend approval of the landmark property agreement. I thought we already agreed it and we made it a landmark.
Yes, it is a landmark.
Well, that doesn't sound like it to me up there. What does that mean? Could you clarify that?
Are you looking at the second bullet point?
I'm looking at both of them. No, the first one.
Okay, if the proposed landmark property agreement, which is what what the HPC is looking at tonight, which is, I think we use the term Mills Act, Landmark Property Agreement. If it,
Oh, so you didn't use Mills Act, so you
No.
confused me. Okay, I got it.
okay, well, actually, Mills Act is the act. In the Historic Preservation Ordinance is a landmark property agreement. And that's what, that's the agreement that the city makes with the property owner over a certain amount of time. This is a 10-year term, giving the property owner certain tax reductions for their commitment to rehabilitate and preserve and maintain. So in the ordinance itself, it's called a landmark property agreement. I think that we've used the term before, Mills Act, so maybe that's what you're more familiar with. Anyways, going back to landmark properties and landmark property agreements, typically they go hand in hand because if you landmark a property, you want to make sure that that historic property that we feel deserves that landmark status should be preserved and maintained over time. There are landmark properties out there that maybe aren't as preserved and maintained as they could be. And had they had a landmark property agreement, the property owner would be required to do certain things every year, like the attached schedule shows of maintenance or other restoration projects. This just guarantees that the property owner would be able to provide those to this property and to the city. So what benefits occur to the historic property with a landmark property agreement? Well, we get this mutually agreed upon maintenance plan, which assures that the property and restoration efforts will not fall into decline. And what happens if there is not a landmark property agreement? Well, we cannot require the property owner to make improvements or to provide continued maintenance. That's really up to the property owner. Now, they can't do any changes to the property without coming back to the Historic Preservation Commission, additions to the house or any significant changes. But we also cannot require them to make improvements or provide continued maintenance on the property. So for this particular address, I wanted to go back to some of the issues that have come up in the past. And one of them is the front door, and whether or not it was permitted or whether it came before the HPC. The changing of the front door does not on its own require any permits. However, the property was issued a building permit in 2008, which I believe is when the proposed renovations began. And those proposed renovations include a change to the front entry with a one-story addition. And staff has gone back to look at those plans that they originally submitted, what was stamped off and approved as part of that building permit.
Excuse me.
Yes,
That was not brought before HPC, though.
that's
See,
correct.
that's
That
our
was,
problem.
but this is in 2008, and this is prior to the
Them-
property being landmarked.
So then they did it after it was landmarked, but it had been approved before?
Yes.
We should have been notified or something, it seems to me.
That's my question, is why didn't the historic architect or whoever was making the report, he talked about some of the changes that the owner had made in there, but he didn't mention these changes that were in the plans. I'm just wondering how that happened, that there could have been such significant changes, so it was almost like the house we landmarked is not the same one that we wound up with.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before, that landmarking, I think someone's brought it up before, that landmarking the property while it's under construction, those are some of the things, that can happen. But I just wanted to kind of outline, and I know that the applicant, he's not here yet, but Mr. Clark is on his way tonight. And Mr. Fisher, who wrote the Historic Resources Report, was supposed to attend but had a conflict. So I'm hoping that Mr. Clark will get here for any questions that the commission would have. So I'll try and finish this up, and I'll answer any questions that you guys have. And if I can't answer them, hopefully Mr. Clark will be here by then, and we can ask Mr. Clark.
Go ahead.
Okay. So just going back, so in my research on the property, I went back to look at what building permits were applied for and issued. And so the first one is the building permit, which is the initial building permit in 2008. That's prior to landmark status. And that includes the proposed renovation with the change to the front entryway. And another building permit was issued and finalized in 2010. And it does discuss a stucco wall at the living room. However, when I spoke to the applicant, she said that that was a stucco wall that was on the rear of the property, because I believe the living room is towards the rear of the property. But I just wanted to clarify that there was a permit for a wall, but I don't think it's the same wall that we've been discussing in the front of the house. There was another building permit in 2012. This was in April, just before they requested landmark status in May. So that included a second change to the front entry. Originally, they had proposed an arched front entryway, and then they went back in 2012 and changed their proposal, or changed their building permit to change the front entry to more of a squared off entry. And this building permit also included the addition to the first floor, which is that library, I believe at the west end of the property. And on those building plans, there is an outline of a wall which encloses the front courtyard, but it doesn't specifically say a wall. So I just wanted to bring that information to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions, in the staff report or in this chronological history that I've provided that can help clarify any outstanding questions, or, when things took place, when they were changed, what permits, so forth.
So as it stands today, the part of the property that is landmark is the central structure.
Correct.
Nothing attached to it, no site walls, no courtyard walls, nothing else.
Okay, so,
That's not landmarked.
well,
You can't have an attachment. It's an addition to the house.
But am I understanding this correctly? We landmarked it after we had the discussion on the wall.
you modify, yes, the second landmark occurred after, so it was first landmarked in August of 2012. Then it came to the HPC in November of 2012. And at that point, it was continued for reasons that I think I said in here that were just, they seem to have gone away. They didn't seem to be issues that are still occurring today. So in January, when it was continued again. Then in February, it was continued to the February meeting. And it was at that meeting that the discussion, I believe, of the wall came up, because there was this picture that was taken on February 20th in 2013 showing a wall under construction. And I believe at that meeting in February, which was, I'm sorry, the meeting was actually in March. So this picture was taken in February, and when the item came before you in March, there was a discussion that there was this wall that had been built. And at that point, the HPC continued the item again to do a little more research on that wall. But before the item came back to the HPC, they then requested the landmark be modified. And that came before the HPC in July. And the HPC recommended approval of modifying that landmark.
That's what I
Just to, oh,
I'm sorry.
that was just to exclude the other buildings on the property. It wasn't dealing with the original landmark. I am sure this question of the door never came before us, nor did the wall.
Well, the modification to the landmark was to remove the grounds. That's what the language, to remove the grounds. So in essence, it's just the structure itself. And that's how the language is written for the landmark.
I have a question, because, I saw the original Mills Act application, and it was connected to the original Landmark application, which was to do the grounds as well. And I went back to my notes, and if you look at the budget, how he's going to use his money, on the original Mills Act, it's exact same budget, and almost half of it is for the grounds, not for the structure. And so now it seems like he came and asked us to remove the grounds because he didn't want to deal with this wall issue. But now, over $58,000 of how he wants to spend his money is on trimming trees, on putting native plant specimens in, on redoing the driveway. I just wonder how we can grant that request when it's no longer, those items are no longer included in the historic structure that we're approving, or being asked to approve,
Right. Well,
or have approved.
this is a proposed maintenance schedule, so if the commission wished to change or eliminate some of these items or ask him to do more, then that would be part of your recommendation tonight.
Well, I'm wondering if we couldn't recommend that he take the $58,000 that was gonna go to tree trimming and stuff and put it into restoring the door and taking out the wall, because that was the building that we
And-
approved.
Right, and like I said in the PowerPoint, if there's any modifications or conditions that you would like to add to the landmark property agreement, then that's part of tonight's discussion and recommendation.
I gather that they can't replace the door because they've altered it. So I don't know what we do about that.
Yes, the door has been altered. It's much smaller than it was originally.
But under the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines, doesn't it say that your first priority is to restore?
Yeah.
And so he could restore that with other materials, right, the look of that door? Because restoration is a part of what they recommend that you do with the property.
Right, and I think I also offer some suggestions in the staff report about just identifying that door as being the original door, and with a plaque, just identifying that being the original door, and where it's still on the property today. It has not, they haven't gotten rid of it. They could have just gotten rid of the door, but they wanted to keep the door on the property, so they've tried to use it in another way at a different entry.
Why would we want to put a plaque on a door that you can't even see when you drive in there?
I didn't
Isn't
hear
that
what
what
you
you're
said.
saying? Put a
Rose.
plaque on the door that they moved?
Yeah, just a way of
Well, that's
Identifying it.
That doesn't make sense. Nobody's ever going to see that plaque. That door's around the other side of the building.
Well, we couldn't see it anyway because of that blasted wall. Seems to me that we should have something in our code that says you can't hide the front of a
Yeah.
landmark building. I mean, what good does it do the people of Ojai if all they see is this blank wall in front of a landmark? I mean, do we have the right to do that? It's not in our code, but I think it should be.
Which brings up Mr. Fletcher, our attorney. I spoke with him Tuesday night, and I spoke with council people, and they assured me he would be here, so we could also get some legal opinions and maybe some legal enforcement from our city attorney when necessary.
Yes, he did say on Tuesday night that he was going to be here, but he was mistaken. He is scheduled to be here March 13th for the HPC meeting. So I think it was just a mix-up of which meetings he was going to be attending.
I have a question. With this agreement on the maintenance schedule with Mr. Clark, what if he sells the house? And I've heard some rumor about him actually doing that. So is this an agreement that goes with the house? And I kind of feel like, Mr. Clark's, except for these issues, has been a real good steward of the house. So then all of a sudden, Mr. Clark isn't actually in the picture.
Right.
But maybe that's just how it has to be.
And you're correct. This landmark property agreement does protect the structure. from any new owners coming in and making changes. And it would also require them to preserve and maintain per this schedule that.
And my
Adopt.
second part of the question related to this is, how do you have oversight over this? How do you quantify and qualify this work through time? How does that, I mean, how do you know the people are keeping it up? And what's
right.
the system for that?
I think that was discussed at one of the HPC meetings about how often the Community Development Department was going to be going out to, I guess, inspect the property and make sure that he was adhering to this schedule, if I'm correct. Listening to some of the minutes, there was some discussion on whether it should be every year or every couple years. I don't know if anyone recalls that.
But there is oversight.
Yes.
I missed that
Well, we
somewhere.
did talk about members of this commission visiting these places, too.
You mean on a yearly basis?
But it seemed to me that when we talked with Rob, he said that would be up to the city inspector to take on inspecting these, and they wouldn't request that we personally go out and have to do these inspections on the homes.
If I might, I'm just going to say that, as Heather pointed out, this is a mutually, it's an agreement that the two bodies are working on together. So he makes a proposal and you can make changes. So if the commission feels that you want some kind of documentation submitted to the Community Development Department on a regular annual basis, and then you still want to do inspections, I mean, this is something that I think you need to vet through the process, depending on maybe a case-by-case basis, depending on the actual status of the home. I mean, in this particular case, you can see that this home is it's been rehabilitated and restored. The issues that you really have to do with the alterations of a few issues, but not really on how he's maintaining the property on a day-to-day basis. But I think if you enter into an agreement and that agreement has certain monies and certain activities that he needs to do on a yearly basis, I say it's like anything else we do. Give him a date, whether it's at the calendar year or the fiscal year, and have him submit his receipts or his an annual report, and then somebody can then go out and inspect and make sure and verify that was done, if that's what you want. But I think this is a living and dynamic agreement, and if there's things, like Heather says, you want to have that give you a certain agreement or a certain level of comfort, you just need to pursue that and then make that recommendation to City Council.
One thing that occurred to me is this man is a very well-qualified architect, and I can't believe that he didn't know that he was crossing a line with removing that door and then putting the wall in front of the house. I mean, because he knows the business.
I'm a newcomer here, but as Heather says, he proposed and got approval from the city, not via this commission, to do those front facade changes, and then came in afterwards to get landmarked. So I think now, from the set point forward where he became a landmark, he certainly does understand. Whether he knew that making those changes and then asking for landmark was going to have an issue with you, but the reason...
We visited, it wasn't there.
Right, it was the door, because he made significant changes to the front of the house, the facade where the door was.
After we visited,
That he made the changes?
yeah.
Okay,
It
but
was still under construction, but I think
Right.
it had been approved through the city.
So I think for a lot of, I'm not attempting to speak for him, but I've been in this business for a long time, and the city represents the city to individuals and citizens. And when you have a city approval, which is what he had, a building permit, he maybe felt that he could perform on that and complete those. And as far as the issue with the wall and the grounds, there was a modification made to his landmark status to remove the grounds. And maybe we can learn from that situation. Maybe from now on, you're not happy with not having control of the grounds. Maybe in future times, you don't want to do that. You don't want to landmark a property without having control of the grounds. So I think there's a couple things we can learn from this and go forward. I think the issue still remains that the wall whether it's there with permission or not, actually does kind of set into the house and alter the house, and maybe that's an issue, the fact that it's integrated into the house, and that's an alteration, and that should have, then that does fall into the landmark status, and that's kind of a nuance. But I do think that going forward, it seems like if these issues are going to come up before the commission, we want to make sure that when we're landmarking, we're kind of landmarking everything we want to preserve. Because you do have much more control when you maintain that landmark status over the ground.
I just wanted to tell you, since you are new, and you mentioned city approval of things, we have a revolving staff in planning, and we don't keep our employees for many years. Not that I'm hinting anything, but so things have slipped through the cracks, and people have gotten permission, or they never got permission, and nothing was done about it because the person that was working on it is no longer working here. So we're having to deal with that too, and that's why you see some citizens who've gotten away with following the rules.
I just wanted to know if there was something in the process that we could add or we should be aware of, that when somebody's landmarking the house and it comes before the commission, that any outstanding permits be included in that packet so that we can make a educated judgment about it, not know that because the architectural historian had pictures of the front door, he called it out and talked about this wonderful front door and everything. So that was part of what the commission made its decision on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure had they known that sitting on the back burner was this whole change, it might have changed the discussion. And
I can certainly agree with what you're saying. I mean, you know, we all want full disclosure on everything we're making decisions on. I mean, all of us. So I agree, and we'll do the best going forward to make sure that, I mean, I think, you know, everything is a learning experience, and we certainly are taking a lot from this process, and I think that's one of the things, is making sure everybody understands what's going on. And also, I think that the commission looks at what really they want to protect or preserve with a landmark property. So I agree, and I think we can work on that and do a better job of it.
And the other question I had is, does he get the same amount of tax benefit regardless of what he proposes to spend it on? I mean, since he's got so much money in preserving the grounds that isn't even part of our landmark, can we recommend that those costs be deducted out, or would he get that money anyway? Is it?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I know it's a kind of complicated formula that they use to determine what those tax reductions are. But I would suggest in the preservation and maintenance timeline, that if there's anything that you would like to be done that you don't see on here, that we add that. And if it means, you know, adjusting it so that, you know, it's not, tree trimming isn't $3,800 or whatever. Yeah, $3,800 a year. Maybe some of that is focused towards something else that.
Well, I'm just not sure that the taxpayers' dollars should be paying for something that isn't even part of the historic.
Well, then, you know, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but my recommendation would be that you be very clear on what is landmarked. Because usually with assessments, we all know this, that the land is assessed different than the structure, correct? We all get tax bills. So I would think that you'd want to be very clear in adopting your agreement to say this property structure only, and identify it as a landmark status, and that no part of the grounds or the land is, if you're wanting it to be very clear on what is going to be covered by this Mills Act.
But isn't that what we decided to do?
I think it is what you decided to do. I'm just saying if it's very clear that way, and it goes to whoever then reduces, I mean, it's out of our hands when it goes to the person who gives them the tax credit, correct? But if the agreement is very clear that the tax credit should just be on the house, then I think we've done the most that we can do given our authority.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't been in the house for a year or so, but it looks to me from the rehabilitation timeline plan that the building envelope is largely complete of the historic structure, the protected structure. And the inside, I'm looking at the list, it shows some mention of interior plaster repair, but that's about it. So am I assuming that largely the restoration of the structure and the interior is complete?
I think so. I think it'd be nice if Mr. Clark were here and you could ask him those questions yourself. But I think that at this point, I think at this point with we did a site visit and it looks the same way to me. It looks like a very well restored and nicely kept piece of property. So I would assume that the same assumption you're making.
Okay. It's been so painful, this project for the commission, and thank you for putting together this timeline of the permits and the appearances before the commission. It's been wrenching, and as you can see, it continues to be. And part of the fault for that lays with the applicant and just the whole process. Several things haven't changed, though. It is one of the original George Washington Smith spec houses, and as Commissioner Hill mentioned the other night, it's the best of the three. And we have limited the protected status to the central structure. I would say, for me, I would like us to put it behind us. And my fear is that if we don't protect this, that will be the end of the line for this in the HBC, and that, and I mean, I don't really care if the applicant sells the property, but then if he does, it's not protected, and it never will be. So I think that the work that they have done is of the highest quality, the design and the coherence with the original George Washington Smith structure. But I would have to say that this project, more than any other, has put this commission and each of the commissioners on high alert. And we're not in the mood for any more obfuscation from this applicant or further applicants. It's going to be increasingly difficult.
The house would be protected, however, because it does have landmark status. So that's not a problem. But I would like to ask of you ladies if you have any idea, would we have any authority to prohibit landmark owners from obscuring the view of their landmark? I mean, that seems to me a fairly important issue here.
Yeah, and I think going back to the grounds, when a project is landmarked, considering the grounds as well as whatever structure is being landmarked as just as important. And I think we've seen that on some other properties as well. That I know that the commission has been interested in preserving the view of the landmark property from the street. So protecting the grounds would be part of it, and including the grounds in the landmark status.
The problem is, he has built considerably on that property, and that none of it is eligible for landmark status. I mean, it's all new construction and built to harmonize with the George Washington Smith house, but it couldn't be landmarked. So I don't know how we would deal with that.
Well, I think a good example would be the Ojai Valley School. You have several structures on the property that could receive landmark status, but that, there's also other structures on the property that were just recently built, so that wouldn't be possible. But, maybe with this landmark property agreement is where you can become more specific on what is touched and not touched, or what can be changed and not changed. I think we see that with other properties like 1000 Foothill, where some of the interior characteristics of the house are specifically called out in their landmark property agreement. So there's, it's kind of like a two-tier process. You landmark the property, but then you go even further in the landmark property agreement to call out specific aspects of the grounds or the house that you want protected.
But should that be part of our code to say that
I think
something there is that doesn't like a wall, as Robert Frost said, but we don't like it either if it hides the
right.
view of the land?
I'm a little uncomfortable with all this discussion, and the owners aren't here. Did they say they would be here at 7, at 8, or 9, or what?
They said that they would be a little bit late, but I don't know if.
I was told I was supposed to be here at 6 o'clock, and so my husband's on his way here.
Oh, you're with the owner?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Good.
So if you want to open.
He'll be here to answer any questions any minute.
So when the applicant does arrive, Chair, if you want to open, because we're still in comments.
Are you done with your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. So, back to the rehabilitation timeline plan. Because of the comments you just made, I really don't have any problem with including in that landscape maintenance work because, yeah, I mean, it even though the grounds are not protected under our landmarking agreement with this applicant, it does enhance it. So I don't have any problem with that being included in this budget.
Well, I was just going to ask, because I think we're still in commissioner comments, and then we would move on to opening it up to the public for comments. Or if there's any questions, other questions from the commissioners, I can answer now. It's up to the commission to decide what they'd like to do.
Well, I would just like to reiterate my position that we only approve for the Mills Act what was approved for the landmark and have those two because you said they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I would feel more comfortable if the Mills Act applied only to the landmark and not to any other buildings or whatever on the grounds.
Okay, and then somehow incorporate.
I wonder if we should have a subcommittee work on this to bring back, because we seem to have, I mean, can we decide that in this meeting, what we think should be done, such as restoring the front door? I mean, are we talking about that anymore?
That was sort of the question that I have, like, if we were to want to make adjustments or changes to this, I mean, would the expectation be that we would do that around the table tonight?
Mm-hmm.
I think Commissioners.
I think that you really need to have an applicant here, and he, I think, would be a valuable component to engage in what he intends to do with the project on the property, because it has had a lengthy history to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably it wouldn't, I mean, it would be nice if we could just come to terms with the fact that we're going to agree to approve a Mills Act and then allow some dialogue between you and the applicant on what he wants in that and what you want in it, because it is somewhat of a negotiated contract agreement. So I think he needs to be here and you need to hear from him. And then if we could just get beyond the hurdle of, yes, we're going to do a Mills Act, now we're down to the fine tooth of what we're going to put in there. Then I
Okay.
think that would be a very large step forward for this project.
Okay.
And I also want to just make one thing clear, too. With the tax credits that they receive, I don't think the tax credits have anything to do with the amount of money that they're spending. I might be wrong on that, but that's my understanding. So I think that identifying just that we're giving them a Mills Act tax credit for that portion of the project that is landmarked doesn't then preclude you from asking them to continue to do what you feel will enhance the property, you know, because I don't think that, and am I correct on that? So I think that, you know, I mean, obviously the applicant, we're very privileged to have an applicant that's an architect and kind of has an eye for what needs to be done. And as you've all admitted, he's been a very good steward of the project. So I think maybe having him here and having the dialogue and you guys coming to terms, but like I said, just moving forward with that, yes. Now we're down to fine tuning the agreement. I think that's a wonderful step forward.
I would like our city attorney to be with us or to at least see the agreement and help us out legally before I take any kind of a vote.
Well, actually, this has been forwarded to the city attorney for review, and he's taken a look at it. So we can have him, if there are changes that are made tonight or proposed changes that are made tonight about the agreement itself, then, you know, we can get the city attorney's, comment on that before moving it to the city council. But he has taken a look at the agreement and the staff report. Yeah, if you'd like to continue this and maybe take item number 5 so that
Okay.
the applicant can get here and we can,
Let's cycle back.
yeah.
Okay, good idea. And, let's see. Well, that would be, I have no, there is no item 5.
Well, we have, we have discussion item number 5, which is the site visit that occurred on January 18th.
Okay, it's not in the booklet.
There's no report. And if I may, staff put this on the agenda just basically to kind of gather all the comments from the site visit from January 18th to landmark number 4, which was 1,000 Foothill, and just kind of put all those comments together. And I believe the applicant is in the audience. He'd like to hear some of your comments based on that site visit, and he had put out the story polls to give an idea of where the proposed fence would be located and the different heights that he proposed. So if the commission would like to make comments on that.
So we'll open it up for public comment period on the item number 5 at this time.
It's not really a public hearing, so I would just comment among the commissioners, and if you'd like to call the applicant up
Okay,
at some point, that's fine.
okay. So it's open for commissioners' comment on landmark number 4, located at 1,000 Foothill Road.
1,010.
You can.
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry's not here.
Maybe he would like to make.
Terry has very strong opinions about this one.
So, yeah, I'm happy to follow that up.
Did you have some
actually.
remarks?
Yeah, I did actually make some comments, and I make some packets actually on different ideas. If you want to take one and pass them around.
I just want to be careful, though, this is not a actual proposed application item on the agenda. It's just strictly to get comments on what was seen at the site visit.
I had a few I mean, should I go ahead and speak, or is it?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And just state your name.
Ramin Shamshiri. I'm
You're the owner of the subject
1,000
property.
Foothill Road.
Thank you.
Yes, and good evening. I want to thank the commission for taking the time to come out to our house, and also for seeing me again tonight. I'd asked that you come out to the house so you could have a better understanding of our situation, and I hope that you could see that the setback for our house is very shallow. The house itself sits within 40 feet, within the 40-foot setback currently allowed for a barrier higher than 3 feet. The door we use most often to enter and exit the kitchen on the north side of the house is about 45 feet from Foothill Road, which is a road with no sidewalk, no parking, which results in cars driving by inches from the steps to our entry gate. We're currently not able to lock these gates, and the existing rubble wall varies in height from 8 inches at a low point to 30 inches at a high point. But the majority of the wall is anywhere from 12 to 18 inches tall, which is easily scalable for most children. I think, as you know, my wife and I have 2 young boys, ages 2 and 4. We have 2 dogs. We tend to have a number of visitors come to our house with small children. And at any point, there can easily be 12 children running around the property. You know, if we have a birthday party for one of our sons, there's 20 to 30 children running around. Foothill Road bears little resemblance to the road that existed when the house was built in 1908, and there's consistent traffic all day. The posted speed limit of 35 is rarely adhered to, and we find cars continually driving by anywhere from 45 to 60 miles an hour. If you drive up and down the road, you notice that a majority of our neighbors have some sort of fence or wall, but few have the shallow setback that we have. And when I was here last, many of you did not see a need for a fence to protect our children and guests and pets from potentially running out on the street. My wife and I really feel this is a necessity and would equate it in many ways to covering or fencing a pool. It may not be the most aesthetically pleasing, but it's required by code to prevent accidental drownings. While we do spend most of our time in the backyard, given the proximity of the house to the street, it is entirely conceivable that an accident could easily occur on this street. And even with the most vigilant parenting, the possibility is there. And my wife and I want to do everything we can in our ability to prevent any potential accidents. And I hope that by visiting our home, you could understand our predicament. Previously, I'd requested a 6-foot rubble wall to run along the path of the existing rubble wall. And after laying out the heights on site, I agree with you that 6 feet was excessive and unnecessary. And what I would like to propose is some sort of barrier that ranges between 4 and 5 feet throughout the property line, either on the rubber wall or set just inside of it. The previous submittal process was incredibly time-consuming and expensive, and I wanted to make sure that we had some sort of viable option before proceeding, so that's why I asked for you to come out and be able to speak tonight. I put together a packet with 4 options that we could explore further once I have some feedback. If you go to page 2, we have the photos of the existing conditions with the potential barrier mocked up at the different heights. The red tape is 6 feet, the yellow tape is 5 feet, and the blue tape is 4 feet. Page 3 shows a rubble wall option proposed to undulate between 4 and 5 feet, similar to the photo in the upper right. The rocks would be laid very similar to the gate directly across the street from our house, shown in the photo on the lower right. This can be done either on the existing path of the rubble wall or potentially set 1 or 2 feet inside the rubble wall. Page 4 shows a potential wood picket fence set inside the rubble wall. Page 5 shows a metal artisan fence just inside the rubble wall. It might be a little far-reached, but and out of our price range, but it's an option. Page 6 shows a simple wood fence with like chicken wire set inside the rubble wall. It would be very basic. I know that many of you either work in architecture or are design aficionados, and just to give you a little background on myself, I too come from the design and architectural world and have worked in the business now for 17 years. I'm one of the founding partners of a firm called Commune based in Los Angeles, and we are a collective of architects, interior designers, and graphic designers that work on commercial, hospitality, and residential projects throughout the world. One of our specialties is restoring historic properties, and they range in style from, the arts and crafts to mid-century modern to Spanish colonial. We just recently completed a historic restoration for the Ace Hotel downtown in Los Angeles, and also one in Panama City, Panama, of an old colonial building. Our work has been written up in countless publications ranging from Architectural Digest to the New York Times, and we are often approached to update these historic properties to function in a modern environment. And our philosophy has always been to respect the architecture and stay true to the materials and styles originally used. And we tend to bring in our clients' personalities through furniture, artwork, or accessories, items that can be changed over time, but the architecture should remain timeless. I hope you can agree that a barrier is needed as a safety measure for our family and friends given the present-day environment on Foothill. If so, and looking at the variety of options, in my opinion, the rubble wall is easily the option that is most in keeping with the historic nature of the house. The other items include introduce a new language to the property that doesn't currently exist and aren't necessarily true to the era. And I have reservations also about how they would transition into the pedestrian and driveway gates, which currently have a natural path based on the present rubble wall that works well with the existing landscape and mature trees. In closing, I want you to know how much my family and I adore this property and intend to do everything we can to preserve it over the coming years. And my intention here is to simply ask that you support us in making the property as safe as possible given our current predicament, while at the same time maintaining the integrity of the existing architecture. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for the, the way you presented it with the colored tapes and everything when the day you had us out there. It made, was very clear, and clear that you put a lot of effort into the presentation for that day. I think all the commissioners were able to make it except Pat. Right, Pat Dorner. So with that, I think
If there's any comments on, what you saw out there, the heights, what you'd like to see, if something was proposed again. Obviously, applicant is saying what was originally proposed and what the commission commented on before, the 6-foot-high rubble wall, is clearly not an option. But if there's something that the commission, wouldn't be opposed to seeing based on what they saw at the site visit, that would be helpful, I think, for staff and for the applicant if they choose to come back with another proposal.
I have to say that, and I think it's been said by other commissioners, it's one of the most sensitive landmarks in the city. And I know that there are people that just don't, commissioners that just don't want to do anything. I don't want to raise the wall 1 inch. I think it's a hard sell. And I don't want to, give you any other idea. I think we're really fortunate to have 2 applicants here on the same night that are so talented and so devoted to the properties that they own, and we are sensitive to that. But we are just beholden to the bylaws of our commission, and that is to preserve these properties as well as we can. So with that, I think I'll turn the discussion over to the other commissioners.
We could ask David Mason to say something.
Well, this is actually, because it's not, it wasn't an application, and the reason for it being on the agenda tonight is to get comments from those commissioners that were at the site visit on January 18th to comment on what they saw based on the story polls, the heights, and we went over these same possible fencing options that day as well. And if there's any, I think staff and the applicant are clear that the rubble wall should not be touched. But are there any other viable options in setting a fence?
Well, there are many properties in Ojai that are very suitable for children. This is a historical place that is not necessarily suitable for children in the front yard, yet almost every family that's been there's had children. Alice Borgeson was there for 10 years. I've lived here most of my life. I was born here. I do not know of one accident ever happening on Foothill Road. And I just feel like you're not interested in historical, you want a place for your children, you can find another place in Ojai that'd be very suitable. We don't own this land. We don't own this property. We're only stewards while we're here on earth. And this commission is here to preserve our historical places.
I've done quite a bit to preserve the house. I've really.
And you've done a good job on that.
I've
yes.
done quite a bit.
Thank you for that.
And we, like I said, there's a lot of properties in Ohio. You're correct, and we absolutely adore this
And you
property.
also have a wonderful backyard that you could make into a children's playground almost as large as Zarzodi Park.
No, I agree, ma'am. I think it's really a precaution. Like I said, I would equate it again to covering a pool. It only takes a second for something to go wrong. And if my wife and I wouldn't do everything in our power to prevent that from happening, I would never forgive myself.
Like I say, every family that's been there,
So,
they've come out alive.
I really appreciate that. I think it's just, I think we're just trying to prevent something from, that may happen. I mean, I think if you look at the driveway, there were gates at some point as well, which don't exist right now. There's definitely latches in there to accept the gate, which is another issue that we have. So I believe there was definitely, if you go back, there were gates there.
I have a question or comment or whatever. When we were there on the site visit that day, you and I spoke briefly, and I asked you a question, but I'm not sure we really fleshed it out, so I want to ask it again. Have you thought about putting some kind of a fence between, I think it was like the sort of the north corner of your house, sort of across the front of that. It's like a pergola out there.
Between that and the smaller caretaker's house?
Yeah, I think so. And,
Yeah.
and going, and then also on the, I don't know what it looks like on the southern end, that would keep your children in the backyard.
Yeah, I thought
safely.
about doing that, but frankly, I thought, the idea is to kind of maintain the integrity of the architecture of the house, and I was hesitant to attach any sort of fence to that corner of the house. That the legal setback, I think I'd put that red line, pretty much runs right through the center of the kitchen. So it's, I mean, if that's the only option I have, I would do it. I would hate to do it because I think it would really take away from the aesthetics of the house.
Yeah.
I'm really just trying to propose something that, it would suit our, what we're trying to achieve here and maintain the integrity of the house.
Well, here's another thought too, is you're also looking at a sort of a certain time period in your children's lives. Ostensibly, they're going to get to an age when you're not going to worry about them running out into the street. Right. So I wonder how that might fit in somehow in a decision, of something.
It's a thought. I mean, it's I would guess it's probably 10 years, and so again, I go back to that, this is a landmark. Is that, putting in something temporary that can be removed, like, is that something anybody wants to look at for 10 years? Because we've done that for other projects that we've done, and they're generally not aesthetically pleasing alternatives, and it's not something I would, I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't want to look at it the entire time, and I'd imagine that everyone in the city that really appreciates the landmark wouldn't either, But it's definitely, I mean, if that's what our option is, and I guess I'm here tonight to I think last time I didn't really have any direction on what would be approved, and I think what I walked away with was pretty much don't do anything, and if that's all that we're going to achieve, then I guess, then I know the answer, but I just want to see if there was an alternative,
I have another question, and I think we talked about that day, but I kind of forgot what you said. Did you say that you would not really touch the foliage in front of the house if you built the wall higher?
I would try not, yeah, well, no, I would try not to.
To help kind of visually damp it down and not make it look as imposing, let's say.
Well, if it was necessary, I would. I mean, it wasn't an intention. I was trying to preserve, as
Just
much
the
as the foliage
foliage.
as possible. I
Okay.
just feel like it's kind of part of the property. But
Okay.
if that's something that if I need to do, I would consider it.
Okay, thank you.
I would say from my point of view, I appreciate, you're raising the children and your concerns about your children. And so I would be open to the idea of some kind of a fence there that would just be made out of metal, but something that could be removed easily, if not by you, but by a future owner who might say, I don't want this fence there. So the thought of maybe something going, as you showed here, that would go behind the wall on the lawn, that ideally 3 foot, but possibly 4 foot, that would keep the young children in, would look nice, but would be something that someone in the future could take out without damaging the property. That's my big concern of these big walls that go in and they're anchored into the building, and then it becomes impossible for someone in the future to take it back. So, but I can understand your need for something at this time. So.
Right. I mean, I guess the question is that something I should pursue and propose? I just, again, I don't want to waste your time or, the process is expensive to submit, and it's time consuming. So I guess I'm just here today to say, is that's a realistic alternative, because I don't want to go through the process and come back and get
I
denied.
would just like to suggest from my point of view that the house is a landmark, and it is a work of art, to consider it that way, but it's also a house where people live, and so I would hope maybe others could, I mean, I'm just throwing that out, that something could be put in that could be removed without changing the rubble wall, without changing anything else. It could be eliminated. Then that would take care of your problem. I mean, for the time being, someone at the house would say, well, there's this fence there. I don't even like the idea of it trying to look like it was originally there or part of the original design, but just something that be like metal tubes that would be nicely done, but simple, but not try to fit in and try to be part of the, you know what I mean? It would be compatible.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I think what I was trying to point out, yeah, I thought the rubble wall was kind of most in keeping with the era and the architecture, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good idea, to have temporary. Just like when the kids are little, you have a little area, and then when they get bigger.
I mean, it wouldn't have to look like it was temporary. It could look
It could be.
substantial.
Yeah, I want it to
but
look
could
nice,
just be
to be
something that
honest.
Somebody
It's-
could, I know you wouldn't build it unless it looked nice.
Right.
But it could be something that someone could remove, if not you, then the next owner, and there'd be no traces of it. It wouldn't be like you added onto the original rubble wall or you built something really substantial.
Right.
So I don't know if,
It's kind of like trying to read the tea leaves, and, you know, we're not charged to do that here. I would not place large odds on it passing. I think that the most doable, maybe, solution is the one that Commissioner Basacha mentioned, something back at the place of the house, but also something that was impermanent in a way, almost like a pool fence. I know that's so distasteful, but we are in a very sensitive time here on the commission. We have a lot of thorny things that,
Yeah.
you know, so.
I mean, I can do that.
I don't want to give you false hope, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I mean, I can certainly do that. Frankly, I would just be surprised that something like that would be approved rather than something that's trying to blend into the house, because it is kind of not the most attractive thing to look at, you know. And I think, you know, we in my work, I mean, we do everything we can to make these barriers kind of as nice as possible, because they're never the best thing, but they're required. But
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what will get approved, I mean, I can certainly do it. But I'm surprised that would go through. So,
I think that in this kind of casual forum, we're not able to guarantee anything.
right.
I'm sorry, I know that you wanted some more clarity than that, but.
maybe others could say whether they would be open to that idea or not.
Is there an issue with putting gates in the driveway?
Wasn't that?
That was
wasn't
part
that-
of the original proposal.
That was coming to us, wasn't it? Or
That
the-
what, it came to you,
Yes.
yeah.
Because
But-
that's actually one of the worst spots, because there's just nothing there. So that people just wander out. I mean, I've lost dogs. I mean, you know, I don't know. That's just.
So you'll have
So-
to refresh me. Where did we
Okay,
end up on the gates, the wood gates?
So what happened was, yeah, when the item came before you in, I believe it was November,
Yeah.
it was just denied by the HPC, recommended for denial. The entire proposal, which was,
Primarily because of the stone wall.
yeah, but I think
Height, I
the
think.
commission couldn't get beyond that. And
there
so
was
the entire request was recommended for denial.
Okay, that's right.
So there, and actually, just to refresh your memory, so at the time they were requesting from the HPC a design review permit, because they're a landmark property and they have a landmark property agreement. So they were requesting to do this proposed fence or wall. But in addition to that, because they were proposing a 6-foot-high wall or fence, they would also need planning commission's approval of a variance. So where it stood last time was the HPC made a decision on the design aspect of the fence/wall. And at that point, the applicant had the choice of continuing on to the planning commission for the variance with a denial for the look of the fence or wall. Or the applicant could come back with a different proposal And the applicant, I think, is trying to figure out whether that's viable, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shamshiri. I think we've closed our comment period on this item. Unless somebody else has something to say.
I've said enough.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that will return us to item number 4. Am I correct, Ms. Waldstein?
Yes, if you'd like to go back to item number 4 and open it up for a public hearing. And at that time, you can ask if anyone has any public comments. If the applicant's in the audience, they can come up and speak.
So we are in our public comment period. So
Yes, and actually, I just wanted to hand out, I did have this other letter. So I'm going to pass this around. This was another letter for this project. You received one letter that Mr. Dunn, and then this is an additional letter.
So I see that Mr. and Mrs. Clark are here, and I'll invite you to approach the podium and announce yourself. And I think some of the commissioners have questions, and we'll just open it up for discussion.
Okay, great.
The question that I have is the status of the improvements to the main house. It appears from the timeline for the improvements that the main house is pretty much where it's going to be right
Yes.
now.
Yes, it
The
is.
exterior shell is, I'd say,
Yes.
largely completed,
Yes.
and from the photos that we have, the interior is on its way or near.
Yes, it's almost finished.
Mhm.
Just a few minor things, really.
Uh-huh. So
The image that was up there is,
Sorry.
from who knows long,
Right.
some time ago.
Yeah, that was just to clarify.
do other commissioners have questions of the applicant?
Maybe we can bring the applicant up to speed on what's staff's presentation and the commission's discussion on the landmark property agreement. And if the HPC decides to recommend approval of the landmark property agreement, there may be some possible modifications or conditions to be added to that agreement. And that was what we were going to
That's where we were.
That's where we were, and that's what we were waiting for the applicant to be in attendance to discuss those items.
So, we did have a couple of commissioners come up with ideas for alterations to the agreement, I thought. And now I can't think of what they were.
All right, you were discussing the fact that if this is if the landmark just applies to the building itself, could the schedule of preservation and maintenance include annual tree trimming or preservation and maintenance of the grounds, even though the landmark doesn't cover the grounds? And I think that Ms. Wold
Yeah.
went over that. So the question was if there was any additional items that you wanted to add to the maintenance schedule, preservation schedule. You wanted to discuss whether the original front door could possibly be restored.
Okay.
I think one of the questions that came up was that when it was originally presented to us for Mills Act status, we were considering the whole property, including the grounds. And
Yes.
the budget schedule that was shown was for 58,000 of it was for things like keeping the trees trimmed and planting native plants and trying to restore the original driveway, which are all part of the grounds. And then at some point, the grounds were removed and only the structure itself was going to be considered for landmarking. And then now the budget still includes taking care of the grounds. And there was something about that that felt like, well, why, if that was something that wasn't going to be in the landmark and the agreement, why would that be covered by the taxpayers' dollars in the Mills Act?
Sure.
I think what we were, the part that, in our response to that was that that the tax credits that you get aren't necessarily represented by the amount of money that you're spending on maintenance. I think they're two separate issues. That's what we believe as staff. So the tax credits really go along with a percentage of tax credit you get on your assessed value of the property, and not necessarily the maintenance dollars. And so I think that's how we answered that question. And so I think it's really a decision for the commission whether they want him to spend that money on the grounds, or they think the money that he's proposing is better spent some other place. And I think that's really up to what you're doing, separate from whether or not there's a tax credit on that, because I don't believe that there is. It's just based on the assessed value of the home.
I think one of our problems too, I'm looking at the end of Jerry Camarillo Dunn's letter, and he says 50 years from now, architecture students may come to Ojai to see Arbolada House B precisely because of Kevin Clark's work. Well, they can't see it. There's a wall in front of it. So, I mean, we can't see it now because of that wall. And that
I don't think that's accurate. I mean, the wall is part of the whole structure, and you know how it's perceived with there's two buildings that weren't there before as well, and so that is softening the main structure. It's over, you know, it's probably over 250 feet wide if you take the whole thing as one sort of lineal home. So that's there to give it a proper, I think, a proper balance and proportion. So. And besides that you can see, I mean, I don't have there's no wall that protects it from, people have, you know, because of the article and whatever, they stop and they look right at the front door. It's through planting material, and I believe it's less dense than it was years ago. So I don't agree at all with the fact that you can't see the house. The people
agree that the wall obscures the view of the front of the house?
Of the front. Well, I think it does, yes, but it has a lot to do with I think a sense of balance that the house has now. And you know, this is when I started with this, you know, with Charles Fisher and the interaction that I had with the building department, I was very clear about what I was doing, and you know, I went through 4 different permitting processes before it was ever landmarked, and I was very clear about what was going to, you know, transpire. There was a portion of the wall that was there prior to, you know, to the final permit that I took out for the second story portion. So I feel like I couldn't have been sort of more honest about it. And I forget who made this comment when my daughter was here last time for me because I was sick, but somebody accused me of going rogue, which couldn't be further from the truth. You know, everything I did was right out there. And when I talked to Charles Fisher, who's a historian, and I told him exactly what I was doing, because I never thought about, I don't even know why I got involved in this process at all, because it hasn't been, you know, certainly any benefit for me. And so I suppose that it was somewhat insulting because, like I said, I went through, the building department functioned different. Brian was everything. Brian, he plan checked, he inspected, and so everything that I did with him, that was the process, that was the protocol at that time. And who am I to say, well, you better take this back if you're planning on, you know, retiring or quitting? But I never heard anything about that. So all I did was I followed all the normal, you know, procedures to acquire building permits and build. And not only that, the builder that I work with is an extremely conscientious person, and he wouldn't go off and do something that he didn't have full approval to do as well.
So it all happened before it came to historic preservation, I guess. But the pictures we were given didn't show that wall. I mean, you know, it presented something different.
Yes, correct. It's just, well, the plans reflected something different, but if they weren't inspected well enough, I don't think that's my fault. There was 4 different permitting processes that went on. There was a permit for the garages, and then the studio building, which again was basically reconstructed from the.
Yeah, I know the work you've done there is absolutely beautiful. I
Yeah,
don't object to
everybody's been
that at
really
all. I
terrific
just,
about that. I just felt that it wasn't properly presented, to say that I went rogue on anything, because, I mean, it happened to be a terrific process through the building department, in my opinion. I've been involved in a lot of different building departments, and I thought it was great. It was very sort of user-friendly, and so, but I do think that somehow that there was a misunderstanding, or maybe the plans weren't scoured quite well enough. But like I said, I never tried to
Well, I
one
think
over.
that was the point of confusion for us, is that the architectural historian's report didn't mention, and there was nothing in the packet that mentioned the wall or mentioned the door being moved, and yet it did call out, the architectural historian's package did call out the door and had a picture of it and said this is the front door and gave the history of it and everything. But in that packet, and I don't know if that's the something that was a shortfalling of the architectural historian who put together the package for landmarking, or if it was some falling through the cracks of the city process or whatever. But I think what the council feels is that, or not the council, but the commission feels, is that the house they landmarked was not the house that they wound up with, and so that's the source of it. I'm not saying I'm just wondering how it got to that point that happened. But I think you can understand why we feel like, well, that we were landmarking a house with this original door and without a wall obscuring it, which a lot of us feel is out of character with the neighborhood and with a lot of the features of that architecture. And then it just appeared.
Also, it's interesting, Mr. Fisher actually took this picture of the front door that was presented to us.
Well, the reason I changed the door is it was falling apart. For one thing, it was a simple slab door from the inside. He didn't show the inside because the inside was awful. The door was ill proportioned, and that's one of the reasons I changed it as well. It was 6 feet 8 inches tall, which is a standard door height, but it was 4 feet wide, and they actually had to take a corner out of an interior part of the house just for the door to open to a 90. So it wasn't well thought out. I know it's sacrilegious or whatever, but still, it wasn't thought out very well. And from the inside, it was a slab door painted white. There was no character to the inside. So he took a picture of the
But you did restore the door and cut it down and use it in
yes.
another place.
Yes, I did. I trimmed it.
But didn't you consider restoring it for the front door and leaving it there?
Well, no, nothing could keep it from being anything but a slab door from the inside, which is basically just a sheet of, sort of like that door, except for without the trim around the outside. So it was very unappealing to me, and I was honest, like I said, with Charles. I didn't probably take a good enough look at the documents that Charles prepared, and like I said, I did end up reusing it. I used as the man door into the garage because I could trim it. I didn't care what it looked like from the inside.
Well, okay. We're still discussing it.
Are there any other comments?
Well, once again, I'd just like to say we certainly appreciate the restoration of the inside. You've done a wonderful job there, but I feel that there's been somewhat of a lack of transparency presented to our commission, which compromises the integrity of the renowned architect and the renowned professional historic preservationist. And I would like to wait until the project is completed before I would consider voting for the Mills Act.
Well, I would like to make a motion if I could. I would like to move that we approve the Mills Act. I'm not happy about this because of all these things that went on, and I hope we can tighten up the process for the future. But I think, like you say, it's a learning experience, and I hope we can learn from it. But I would like to move that we approve the Mills Act status on the house.
I would just like to say that, regardless of whatever money is portioned for, taking care of the property and the trees, that will all be done regardless. I love this town. I love, I bought the house because of the property, to be honest, and because I had no idea how many things were actually wrong with it, structurally, electrically, and heating and air and everything else. And so I will be taking care of this property. It's not subject to whether or not I can afford to do it, based on saving some money, through the taxes. And I suppose I'm uncomfortable with it anyway, because I didn't come here to, I felt like I was almost asked to do this, and I was unaware of the potential, I guess, savings in tax money. So it's been a difficult process, because I feel like I'm a very sincere, honest person, and I wouldn't try to all I wanted to do was take something I think to, and sort of love it and fix it. I walked in front of that property, 25 years ago, and I don't know if you recall, but there was venting that was put in the gable ends. That was a whole house venting system that it was sort of archaic, but it basically destroyed the building. It looked awful, and so I remembered the building, and then when I finally heard that it was for sale, I thought, well, this is sort of a destiny thing or whatever. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I guess I'm just trying to say that whether or not the tax savings is designated, I will still do the things that I was, planning on doing for the yard. And also, I don't know if you know, but because you brought up the original driveway, basically that was 3/4 of an acre of asphalt that was in front of the house, and it didn't enhance anything, and it was a very long sort of driveway that entered from two different spots on the street, and so now it's all planting rather than, or hopefully it will be soon, as soon as I have the money to finish it, but. And so that's been part of my process. I haven't been able to, I have to save and then spend the money to fix it. And so I dug myself into a little hole, but it will be finished and it will be taken care of and kept up.
Well, as I said before you arrived, I don't think we had any other application to the commission that has been more drawn out and more difficult in trying for us, and I'm sure for you as well. And I do remember the house before it, came into your hands, and I remember the condition it was in, and I've watched carefully as the additions have been made and the improvements have been made. And this most recent round with you and with us has really generated, I think, a lot of discussion between us and the Planning Commission. The City Council, and it's been wrenching. But I think I would agree with Commissioner Walker that at this point I'm prepared to approve.
Could I add that until the house is, as part of my motion, until the house is finished, that there be regular inspections and that those be made available to the Historic Preservation Commission?
Right, so as part of the preservation and maintenance schedule that's proposed.
Right.
I think we said before that that's part of the process is for a community development department to inspect the properend on a.
Report back to us, then maybe that would help satisfy Commissioner
We can add that.
Boggs.
So do you want to amend the motion or just add that
Yeah,
in?
because we haven't had a second yet, so.
Right. Is there any other changes to the agreement before we move on to a second?
I think that's a good addition.
Okay.
Commissioner Walker's.
Okay. Is there a 2nd?
I'll second it.
What do we agree to?
Okay, so just to reiterate, there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner or Vice Chair Walker to recommend approval of the landmark property agreement with the addition of having the inspections reported back to the commission on a yearly basis.
No, not yearly, just at every stage of completion on a regular basis.
Well, but I think it's yearly. The the maintenance schedule is yearly. So do you want it done differently than what's on the maintenance schedule?
Can I ask for a point of clarification? Are you talking about just the items on the maintenance agreement, or are you talking about other things that he continues to do?
I'm talking about everything, because we've had this
Okay.
concern about things appearing that are on the plans that we don't know about, and I would like someone to
Are-
be there to inspect it and report back to us and say they're doing this, or they're, what do you think? And
Then I would recommend, if I can be so forward as to say that, then you would want to amend the Mills Act agreement and the maintenance agreement to say for the applicant to revise that agreement, to put in everything that is not completed to date, that you have previous approvals for. I mean, is there?
There's nothing that's going to happen, nothing's going to happen to the outside of the house.
You don't have any outstanding building permits?
No.
That you don't have any revisions or renovations inside?
There's nothing else that's
At this
that's
point-
out there.
oh, okay.
The question would be, for example, I haven't completed that garden as you walk through into there. There's a sort of a geometrically designed garden, hedges and so forth that are going there. But what about, so do I need to present something, calling out planting materials or trees? Because there's going to be planting material that's going to go in that, in the front of the house, the motor court, and there's going to be, there's going to be a couple of trees I'd like to plant as well.
I believe as part of one of the building permits, that garden that you're talking about was part of one of the building permits, if I can remember correctly, on the plans.
Okay.
There was some geometric.
Okay, yes, there probably was, yeah.
So
It just
then,
hadn't been-
yeah, so maybe, and if that's the only thing that has not been built out yet, maybe that's what the commission would like to see, is maybe a planting plan
Sure.
of that prior to it being implemented.
Okay,
Because I think that's the only building permit that has not been finalized.
right. That is the final one, yes.
Right.
I guess I'm just asking if you would be willing to work with the commission as you go towards completion to
Sure.
have a dialogue about these things that we don't yet know about.
Yes. I mean, for example, a good question would be if I wanted to plant a couple of mature trees, a sycamore or oak, in that it may filter out the house a little bit when it gets placed, but I think that's usually a good thing to soften things up. But in other words, I'm not trying to, make it, less visible from the street, but I do think it needs, a couple of trees, decent-sized trees that will make it feel like it's, been there a lot longer. So is that the type of thing that you'd like me to run past?
You
Which
would
I
be
will, that's no
You would be
problem.
willing to bring those before us
Sure.
and get our approval on those?
Sure. Okay, great.
Okay, so then we'll go back to Vice Chair Walker's motion with that inclusion to bring back anything that the applicant is proposing for HBC's review. And then we have Basasha's second on that. So are we ready for a vote?
Do we have, you seconded?
Yes.
So Chair McCready,
Yes.
Vice Chair Walker,
Yes?
Commissioner Basasha? Yes. Commissioner Boggs?
No.
Commissioner Dorner?
I don't know, that wall still bothers me. I mean, I can't see the house. Can other people see the house?
We just want to hear yes or no.
I guess I'll say no.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-2. Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So, moving on to, okay.
Yes. So the motion is approved.
Mr. Clark, so we'll be in touch to kind of firm up the agreement prior to going to city council.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We want to save the place, So anyway.
So we next have our, I think we've completed all our items with the exception of the subcommittee reports.
And planning report and, yeah.
Pardon me?
But yeah, we move on to number 6, the subcommittee reports.
Subcommittee reports. And item A is, I think, perfect compliance review. I think that what the commission is moving into is a period of heightened awareness of our landmarks and compliance, and maybe this is something that we needed to do. So that would be my comment on that.
And I
It'll help
just-
us all.
I'd just like to mention too, with Chair Lloyd's or Commissioner Lloyd's resignation from the commission, we would need to fill her spot. I believe she was on
Compliance.
that subcommittee, the compliance review, and she was also on the Ojai Day subcommittee. So you can do it now, or you can think about it and we'll do it the
Maybe
next
someone
meeting.
like this Jerry Dunn seems to be interested in history. Maybe he'd like to be
Well-
on our commission.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that as well as being on the commission. But picking someone to be on those two subcommittees in place of
Okay.
Commissioner Lloyd, you can discuss tonight or at our, bring it to our March 13th.
Should we wait till we
meeting.
get a new member before we
Well, just-
reshuffle our committees?
Yeah,
or-
just an update on
Okay.
that the city clerk has advertised the opening on the HPC. That advertisement closed on February 7th. We have not received any applications. So Commissioner Boggs' suggestion is a very good one. If there's anyone out there that the commission knows of, or anyone out there in the public that would like to be part of this commission, I think that
Usually people are falling all over themselves to join
Right.
this commission. So-
Can I raise a question, because we know it was a sore point before? Is the opening needs to be in the city or can be out of the city? Because that wasn't brought up in previous interviews.
Your mic.
You're telling me you can't hear me? Okay. So, thank you. So again, that needs to be a clarification on any advertisements that take place. Because again, having been in 2 interviews, that was never brought up in either of the interviews, that was a qualification.
whether the commissioner reside within the city?
Whether the people they were looking for to fill the vacancy needed to be within the city of Ojai or could be outside of the city of Ojai.
Yeah, we had a hiccup.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. How many do we have who live out of the city now?
I think Chair Lloyd lived in the city, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah.
she did.
she's probably a city person.
I think you can have 2 that live outside of the city, and the remaining,
You have 3 right now.
okay.
What about Terry
Who's the,
Hill?
oh, he lives outside?
Terry's inside
He's
the
inside
city.
the city.
He's
But I
in the city.
think, Darwin, you're outside the city
yes.
now.
And I'm outside.
Okay, so then there's
You have
3
three
outside,
right
so
now.
we would need, the vacancy would need to be filled by someone that resides inside the city.
And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it has
Yes.
caused.
It's
some-
part of the ordinance for filling the HPC.
No, I
It's-
understand it's
okay.
part of the ordinance, but
Yeah.
again, it was not communicated, or has
Oh.
not been communicated in interviews before, and has caused, you weren't here, has caused me to be sitting here instead of David Mason.
Oh, okay.
And even I would prefer.
Please, don't blame David Mason.
No, it's in no way, I just said I'd rather have David sitting here than me.
Yeah, the non-clarity of that actually caused the city a lot of grief.
Yes.
Okay.
And extra time spent, and it made them look bad, and,
Well, the city clerk did say that she's going to re-advertise it, so I can make that clear, that we need to add that into the advertisement, that the vacancy be filled by someone that is residing inside the city limits.
And someone who likes all of us.
I wonder if Mark Lewis would be interested. Another non-paying job, but he certainly is knowledgeable about
Oh, he would
history.
be great. Oh,
I would suggest, yeah, if you guys know of anyone to,
wow, I just
Okay.
talked to him
Recruit.
yesterday. Should have said something.
We talked about on our subcommittee reports is the historic sites of merit, and at our retreat, we gave assignments for people to contact owners of potential sites of merit. And mine was, I can't remember the name of the building, it's the old funeral home.
Clausen?
The Montgomery House.
Montgomery House. So I'm in the process of contacting that owner, and it's looking promising.
And I contacted the Adam Tolmick, who runs the business in the firehouse, because that was an easy one. It's already a county landmark, and it would just be shifted to being a city. He said he didn't own the building. He gave me the number of the woman who owns it, who lives up in Santa Barbara, and she's been out of town.
Excuse me, but we sent a letter to the owner of the building, and with the written report, and they've never replied.
Right, so I was going to follow up with a phone call.
Oh, good, okay.
So that's what I was going to do, but she's been out of the country. Maybe she didn't reply because she's been out of the country.
Oh.
So he said she'd be back in mid-February, so I'll contact her next week.
And I agreed to do the theater, and I talked to, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, and I talked to Khalid Alawar, although I wasn't sure I was supposed to, because somewhere in the past they decided the city would send letters instead of me talking to people, so I don't know what the policy is now. But anyway, I talked to him. And he said, I asked him if he would like it to be landmark, and he said, well, you know, it should be, but I don't know what would happen to it if I sold it.
I think the landmark status stays with the building, it doesn't,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So that was, I just wanted to quote from what he said, and he likes me to visit him because I'm always telling him stories, historical stories about the theater, some which I can't put in print.
Didn't you say that the boards were falling out or something like that?
Yeah, you
What
could
was
use
it?
the Mills Act now.
So anyway, the Ojai Quarterly, the magazine that's put out by Brett Bradigan, is going to have a big write-up about the theater. So I will be able, after that comes out, I'll be able to write my report. And I just got a new laptop, so I'll have a new computer to work on, too.
Is there anything from the plaque and historic report?
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, one more. Historic Sites of Merit. Also, we are growing that list. And some time ago, last year, David Mason mentioned the Golly Cottages. Now, did we mention that at our
They're on the
retreat?
list.
They're on the list, okay.
And also, I want to say with that with our joint meeting with the city council, that I want to reiterate that it was made clear that we are moving towards enhanced protections for the historic sites of merit, and there should be no confusion about that.
Can I mention one other site that I'm not sure is whether it's in the city or not, but, and, you know, there's a possibility it may be changing hands, is the Fairburn Estate? Is that in the city or outside the city?
It's actually on the list already. It's on our historic sites of merit.
The Wilson Home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I looked at it earlier, I guess I didn't see it.
Yeah, that was one of the 37.
Okay, it should be, but.
Yeah.
Again, you know, the family is deciding what to do, and so it may be something we want to watch carefully if they decide to sell the property.
Right. Well, one of the things I was wondering is if one of these committees could take on this idea of working out ways that we can seal up some of these cracks that were revealed in this process for landmarking.
Yeah, this last one was really awful.
Yeah, so
I
if
mean, the
there's
whole report was nothing like what the house is.
what was going on behind the scenes. So we really need to have some system to better catch that and make it a more transparent. I don't think any of us really knew that that was going on. I don't know if it was something that the staff member should have caught and said, you know, you guys should be looking at the approved plans for this place as part of the process.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel, I don't know if I need to say this, but, you know, when I called, when that Jerry Camarillo Dunn letter first appeared, I was told, well, no, the Historic Preservation Commission doesn't take care of that, the city council does. Well, the city council didn't. And we end up looking like a bunch of idiots. I mean, we should have been able to reply, and it would have been a very good opportunity to stipulate the differences between the Landmark and Mills Act. You know, I mean, it was just, it's as though And I've written letters before, and I send them in, and then they go out over somebody else's signature, which is fine, but I don't think we should have been eliminated from that process, because it was definitely affecting our commission.
Public information, Commissioner Basaccia?
I have a report. I finally launched the Facebook page. So some of you, thank you, signed on
Liked
for
it.
it. You liked it. So I've done one, posting, and you're in it, and Pat's in it, and it's of the jail at Ojai Day. And so anyway, if any of you are on Facebook, if you would look it up and like it, that would help build the page.
Can you give,
Get on Facebook. I've been fighting that for a long time.
Well,
can you give the name of the Facebook page?
I might, it's called Preserving Ojai's Past.
Pretty good.
And Mr. Mason, he's on Facebook.
Yes. He is.
And then he actually shared it with some other people. So I have to tell you this kind of amusing anecdote, is I paid for an ad to build the page through Facebook. And I don't know if it's my fault or their fault, but ultimately I didn't specify the area, which really I just want it for Ojai to build it amongst the community. So I start getting all these likes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, within the first day I have 22 people, and a lot of the people I knew, you and David over there, and some people who I liked through my wife's Facebook page. She didn't know that I did that, but and so they signed up. But then I had all these other people, so I'm like, who are these people? There's like these Hispanic gang guys all tatted up, and so I look at their pages, and it's like there's all these like porn sites connected through their Facebook page.
I'm not getting on
And then there's this whole group of people. For some reason, they're all from Alabama and Tennessee, and I mean, I thought, who are these people? They have nothing to do with Ojai in this page, but they somehow liked the page. So I got into this thing with Facebook about it, and I said, look, it wasn't very clear about the geographical location, and I want a refund. Well, we're not going to give you a refund. And so finally they ended up, giving me a refund. I know how to write, threatening letters. So so anyway, the thing is off the ground. And the other thing I have to mention, which was very important to me, which Commissioner Walker helped me with through the museum, was he gave me a bunch of historical photos, because I want to have historical photos and current, because to me that makes it way more interesting.
I think that's great.
So I'm giving credit to the Ojai Valley Museum when I post those. So anyway, it's good news. It takes, there you go. It takes me a while to have gotten this thing up.
36 likes.
36 now.
That's terrific.
Okay. So like it on Facebook, Preserving Ojai's Past.
And I would like to say that I think I mentioned at our retreat that I gave the slideshow at the Board of Realtors, and it was very well received. And I just got a call today from a woman from the Rotary Club that wants me to come and give it before them. So that's, I think, all positive, because they'll see the historic sites of merit and hear the stories behind them. And I think that'll help to build some good will in the community about preserving the past. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you know, but I suggested to a Rotarian to get you.
Oh, good, okay. Put a bug in there.
I hope that you suggested to them that they not sell any landmarks to people with children.
Well, they were actually very interested in the whole Mills Act thing and wanted more information about it, because they feel that's an asset when they're selling the house, is that
Yes,
they can
it
tell the
is.
person, well, this is a historic home, and if you got this landmark, you would be eligible for these tax breaks. So they were very much on board with that idea that this could enhance the value of the house, and that it could also be a way to help get people interested in it.
Yeah, I needed to, I didn't, I somehow didn't say anything on the plaque and historic, I've got to put my glasses on, report subcommittee. Sherry sent me today 2 plaques that had been redone, one for the Lavender Inn and the other for, but anyway, I printed them out.
Presbyterian Church.
Oh, you've got them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see, my ink ran out on my printer from
Yeah.
printing these out.
well, that's good, yeah.
But, yeah, it's the Nordhoff School.
This is the, yeah.
Was it the women's club?
The objection to the original Nordhoff School was that we didn't list that Alton Lucius Drowned was Ojai's 4th mayor. And the Ojai Valley Women's Clubhouse, we needed to include information about,
Oh, here, this is it.
oh, this is the new one. Is this the new one?
I think, isn't it? And here's the new Ojai Valley Women's
Yeah,
Clubhouse.
Ojai Valley Women's Clubhouse, about Josephine Pierpont Ginn, or Ginn,
Jim.
yeah. So we included that, and that's, the people who are involved with both of these structures will be very happy to get the new plaques. I know Kathy Hartley is particularly interested in getting it for the Lavender Inn, so we'll have to arrange that. Just who's in charge of talking to people who need to have landmark things mounted?
Subcommittee.
I
Subcommittee.
thought Sherry wrote the email that said that they were gonna go attach these tomorrow or something, didn't she?
Those 2 that Commissioner Dorner is discussing, but we also have the Presbyterian Church. I think we mentioned that there's a second plaque. So it's the subcommittee, the Plaque and Historic Report Subcommittee that should contact the Presbyterian Church and identify the location of where we'd like to have that second plaque and arrange for, we'll arrange for Public
That one.
Works.
Would you mind forwarding that to me?
Yeah, I'll forward that.
Send these back. Okay, I'm
So,
done.
That's okay, you can keep those if you want.
What?
You can keep them if you want.
You
With
would have to
that-
send them to me.
You know,
I'll
we
send
we
them.
call it the Presbyterian Church, which originally owned that church, but at the location where it is, where it's Katie's Works or something, it's a business place.
The Works.
It was a Nazarene church when it was moved there. The Nazarene church bought it from the Presbyterians when it was on Main Street, next to where Subway is, next to the Women's Club, but kind of next to where Subway is. And it was the Nazarene church at that time.
Yeah, that's mentioned in the plaque.
Is that mentioned in there?
Yeah.
That's why
Okay,
we changed.
yeah.
Originally located on Ojai Avenue and Fairway Lane.
Yeah. Okay.
And see, it was called,
So for the first
it was
issue.
called the Nazarene Church on the heading, and we had to redo that
Yeah.
because we state that we give the original name, and the original name was the Presbyterian Church, and it was important to note the early Presbyterians.
Well, when it was located out there by Gridley, wasn't it called the Congregational Church?
That was another church that was moved next to it.
Oh.
The 2 were moved together, and Mr. Cady, who was the architect, was well-known through the East for being an architect of Presbyterian churches. So it was important to keep that out there, that it was a Presbyterian.
Goodness,
So-
it's nice we're not fighting in the moment.
Planning report?
Yes, well, I brought up one of the items on the planning report, which was that we need to find replacements on those 2 subcommittees that Jolene was on. So we can do that tonight, or if you want to think about it, and we'll do it at the March meeting, that's fine. I gave you the report about the vacancy. We discussed that already. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the wall that was discussed, I believe, at Tuesday night's meeting at the Libby Gatehouse. So I'm
Yes.
just passing around some pictures. And the building inspector had gone out on February 5th to take a look at the wall because I believe Commissioner Boggs had come in and brought it to staff's attention that this wall had gone up. So as far as staff's research goes, the wall looks to be erected. It's not attached to the Libby Gatehouse. It's about 5 feet back from the Libby Gatehouse, so it's not touching it. But as far as we can see, there are no permits for it. So we're going to go ahead and begin our code enforcement.
You have this picture too?
I have the picture. Is that from the landmark property agreement?
This
'Cause there were
is the
some-
one I took. This one is the recent one I took. This is the one that was in the visitor's guide for sale. But I
Okay.
mean, in your hands, do you have one to look at? No,
Yeah,
you don't.
the ones I just passed out are the ones that I'm
Why don't
looking
you
at.
see this? That one shows the difference. There was a 3-foot wall, and they just put 3 more feet on top of it. And it goes all the way to the end of the property, the other side of the property. The big gate wasn't in yet, and I saw a workman mixing cement in a wheelbarrow, so he was doing more something. And Terry Hill was the first one to notice this. And this picture is just a couple weeks old, and they're just finishing it. But one interesting thing that I noticed, since it is does everyone know where it is, the Libby Gatehouse?
Yes.
Well, of course, you can't see the house from the street, another landmark with the Mills Act. But I noticed that's almost a rubble wall that's about 8 feet tall there. Is it?
Where's that?
I don't know. Well, the gateway.
Oh,
The arch, that came before the
arch.
Historic
The
Preservation
pillars
Commission.
of the arch look like they're rubble, I don't know, which we said you can't build a rubble wall that tall. But anyway, the main thing is, they have now a fortress, and they will be protected from the Ojai enemies.
But is this a new wall that was added to? It looks like it's
Okay.
connecting up to
It's
the,
not connecting, it's 5 feet from
The
it.
top picture I
this
took
arch?
2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, but the gateway picture, that's been there all the time. I just showed that, the gateways, to show the 3-foot wall. That was in the magazine last year. The top one was 2 weeks ago. So does that answer your question or not?
well, I was just wondering, because it seems to affect 2 landmarks. It affects the gate, and then it also affects
You're
the
correct.
look of the gatehouse.
Yes.
So both
Oh,
those 2
yeah,
landmarks
yeah, I didn't even
have
think
been-
about that. Terry didn't mention that.
And then, I was wondering, I mean, this is a point I would like to learn at one of these workshops I've been wanting to take down in, at USC, is when you landmark a house, does that mean you cannot consider anything that isn't attached to the house as affecting it and needing to be approved by the Historic Preservation Commission or the council? Can you just build anything you want around the house as long as it's not attached?
You have
It
to
No.
be, it has to be obviously different from. It can't be molded in to look like the same structure.
But it was my understanding that when you had a landmark, that it also affected other things, like even the view, like even if a neighbor wanted to build a 3-story house next to it, that somehow there was some protection against things that would diminish the landmark. And I'm just not clear enough on how all that
Yeah,
works.
I don't think any of us are clear. Anyway, getting back to the wall, since they already have the Mills Act, I don't know for sure. This is why I want Mr. Fletcher to give us some legal advice. With the Mills Act, can we ask them to take it down, pay the fine to the city or whatever, or take it down and lose their tax break and also pay back the taxes they saved all these years for the Mills Act? And that's the way they broke the covenant, and they should be taken to task for this. There should be a consequence.
I think they should take the wall down.
Well, definitely, that's what we
Maybe they have children they have to lock in.
So code enforcement, City of Ojai,
Well, like I'm saying, I want.
City of Ojai Public Works is now involved.
Yeah,
It is.
I'll finish what I was going to say. That city staff has looked into it. We sent the building inspector out there and he took this picture, determined what exactly we were looking at. And so now it has become a code enforcement case because they do not have permits for it. So we are contacting the property owner, and they'll need to come in and get the proper permits. Or really what they have to do is come before the Historic Preservation Commission.
And get the permit.
Yeah.
Were they the original owners
No.
who signed the?
No.
So they may not have understood?
It's hard to say what they did or didn't understand. I think they just
Well,
built the wall.
they have not been owners for very long, as I understand it. Is that right? They just bought it recently? Because the previous owners are the ones that refused to put up the plaque on the house. They were supposed to call me, and I just kept calling them, and they said, oh, when we come to Ojai, they were a weekend buyer of this historical place. So I'm not sure who the owner is right now.
The owner is Ostrom.
Oh, so it is a different owner than the one I've been dealing with. No wonder they won't come up and do the plaque. They don't own it anymore.
Ostrom is the owner for 1,000 and, there's two landmarks. The archway itself is a landmark. That's 1,000, that's 1,005 Foothill. And then the house is 1,001 Foothill.
Yeah.
And so the owners for 1,001 Foothill is Ostrom.
Well, they've
But
put,
Craig, do you have the other house, the old Cook's house, on your sites of interest? The house on the right?
also put
That
in
red
the-
house on the
Yeah.
right? No,
Oh, okay.
but we could,
I didn't know, because it's, tied into that whole property.
yeah.
See, this was in 2011.
But it might not be in the city limits. The city limits go along there
So
somewhere.
here
Oh, it
they're
is.
telling me to meet with
It-
Okay, that concludes staff's planning report.
Thank you. And with that,
What's that back
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh.
Oh,
wait a
oh, I'm
minute.
sorry.
Wait a minute.
Councilman Lara, do you have some
Actually-
remark?
Yeah, you have museum
Oh.
representative.
We're not finished. There's another page with 4 items on it.
Really?
I didn't get that.
We're going down
Page
that.
3 of 3.
This one right here.
Oh,
Future
okay,
agenda items.
forget it. We're still here for another hour or so. Future agenda items.
Walls. Well, the Libby Gatehouse.
Yeah.
Nothing?
Well, I think we have the Historic Sites of Merit
Right.
scheduled for the next meeting. And that would be for the list. And I do understand that on Tuesday night, the discussion was that we want to make some changes to the ordinance to allow for the HPC to do further than just create the list.
So should we
to-
have our subcommittee meet before the next meeting to work out some,
It depends on how you want to take it. I can bring, I think you've already taken a look at the list. I can bring the list back to the March 13th meeting, and you can recommend that we bring it forward to the city council. We're just talking about the list. And then we can have the subcommittee to also discuss redoing the language of the functions and powers of the Historic Preservation Commission in creating additional, I guess you can call it teeth, as part of this list. So, because that's not part of the ordinance right now. So I just want to make that clear. So we need to work on that. Staff would need to work with the subcommittee to come up with the proper language. I know you did some of the work on the definition of substantial alteration. So we need to work through that and create the language for this ordinance amendment. But in the meantime, if we want, we can take this list, kind of like we did with the heritage tree list, and take it to council. So I can bring that to HPC on March 13th, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory.
would that be something the city attorney, he's going to be there, right? So he could participate in that discussion
Right.
and help us with fashion some language?
Right.
Because I think we're just envisioning 1 or 2 sentences. We're not really thinking in some elaborate.
Right.
I suppose we should research and find out if that ever is a qualification that a landmark has to be visible. But it would, I mean, certainly this one The gatehouse wouldn't be,
You can't even see the roof.
yeah.
Who took this picture?
Our building inspector.
I wonder why he didn't get out of the car and stand there and get the whole wall like I did. There's more picture of car here. He's a lazy building inspector. Didn't get out of the car and walk out and take a picture. I take it back, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then also for our March 13th meeting, we do have the city attorney coming, and he's going to be going over the Brown Act and the functions and powers of the Historic Preservation Commission and how
Mills
we
Act,
run the
too.
meetings.
Isn't he going to,
No, he's not coming to discuss the Mills Act, but if that's something that you want to add to his discussion that night, then that's up to the commission to decide.
But he would be available for some questions we might have, like
Sure.
that were raised here tonight.
Yeah, he can answer questions, but he's, the main reason for him coming is to give a presentation on basically just functions and powers in the process.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, again, because, you know, whatever the family decides on the Fairburn estate, I think we need to kind of watch that as it goes through. If they decide to sell it, watch it as it goes through that process.
Which house are you talking about now?
Where the John and Ginger Wilson lived, that property?
Is that for sale?
I don't know, I know, you know, I don't know what the family has decided or if they're talking, but, you know, that's quite a historic spot.
And would it be possible for you next time maybe to give us a little report on the work that's being done at the museum?
Oh, sure,
Because,
sure, that'd be great.
I'm sure it's nothing that affects the historic status, but I think it would be interesting to
We
everybody.
certainly hope not.
Yeah, after.
Actually, if I can interject, that is actually one more item on the March agenda is the museum's proposal for the garden, I think.
The Chumash Garden?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be on-
and just all the work that's being done, for them to be aware of what's going on, that's all.
Nope, that's a great
Not to
suggestion.
approve anything
Craig.
necessarily, but.
Well, but it is going to be on your agenda for
Okay.
March.
Okay. Councilman Lara?
Very patient.
Thank you, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, good evening, Chair McCready, rest of the commissioner, staff, and Mr. Akins. Glad that you guys are here, and Mr. Mason. I absolutely appreciate your work. I think that you guys obviously came up with some tough issues tonight. It is from a perspective from City Council, the reason why we wanted to give you guys back the Mills Act with Mr. Clark's property. It's just because we felt that there was no dialogue between the commission and Mr. Clark, what we got out of the minutes. And we thought that was going to be very important, and that could possibly give you more information. So as a council, we thought, obviously we read everything, and when it comes up to us, we try to look at everything objectively, and we take the commission's recommendations very serious, and because we respect your expertise on the subject. So that was just one glitch that I saw that maybe thought that could solve the question of the door. Is the door gonna prevent the applicant from getting the Mills Act? And that was just my take on why we sent it back to the Historic Preservation Commission, or back to you guys. But just again, it seems like as we need to provide you more information. Information. I really appreciate you guys asking staff to do so, because your time is very valuable. You are volunteers, and it does affect our residents, and it is about preserving our small town character and our history. So again, thank you for asking, and feeling free to ask. And I think also, if we would like, I would ask, I guess, staff to check in with Mr. Fletcher, because I think he did advised the commission in our joint session that he was going to provide some more information, not just training. So just so that the commission is ready for that information that he's going to provide, just so that you guys are not just handed a bunch of information or questions, that you guys know exactly what he's going to present. But on our side of the of our agenda, we're going to be having some special meetings. We didn't get to talk about our goals and priorities for this coming year. And so we set a special meeting for next Tuesday at 6 p.m. And I'm sure I'm gonna bring just a whole slew of things that are going on as a policy board, and also bringing up where our commissions fit in, and just give you an overview of neighborhood planning. I know is on the agenda, and we do want your participation because it's vital for us to use our commissions for making these tough decisions. And then we also have a special meeting with the Planning Commission, and it's in regards to the Review Gables subdivision. So I don't know if that's of interest of you guys. We're still working on the cell tower. I know that's a hot topic right now going around, but we are trying to get that resolved with the planning department and our attorney that we just hired. Other than that, I don't know if you guys have any other questions on my end or just in general. So, but good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
You don't have to.
We don't have to, okay.
You just adjourn.
We are adjourned.